Hello, this is Ms. Wilhite. We've been using CSS with our HTML pages in the first two chapters without you even knowing about it. This chapter we're going to start understanding how CSS works. In your first tutorial with Dave's Devil Sticks, you had your JProp shop page. You didn't do anything to make a pink box. It just happened magically when you set up your page. The reason it happened is because in your list of files you had a JPS styles sheet. Now you linked your page to that so that the information on that page would cause the changes on this page. This is what your JPS style sheet looked like. It described what the body of your document would look like, what the header would look like, what section would look like, what the aside would look like. Notice here it says the background color is RGB and it gives the colors. That means it's going to be this color of pink. It has a border, 3 pixels solid black. You notice that when you displayed this in Firefox, the border looked different than if you displayed it in Internet Explorer or Chrome. That's because each of them interpreted it differently. What is a 3 pixel solid black border? For them, with the box shadow, some of them rounded it, some of them didn't. Some of them show the shadow, some of them don't. You wrote in there that this was in the style sheet. You didn't create it, but it was in it, that it would have a shadow. And yet it did not in this version that I'm looking at. These are not things for you to worry about when I'm grading your work. All right? So that's what the style sheet looks like for that. Here's shots, tutorial, chapter 2, and this is the style sheet that you attached to that. You linked it right here, and without it you wouldn't have had any of the attractive features that you have on this page. This box, let's look over here at our aside. The aside, it says it floats left, but that's because this is floating left and this is floating left next to it. It has a width of 35% of the page. That means that when I make the page bigger, it's only going to be 35% of whatever I've defined the page to be. I did that back here at the top. I said my page was going to be no bigger than 780 pixels. And no matter how big the monitor is, my page itself is 750 pixels. You just can't see the edges because I've made my page white on a white background. The white background can be any width it wants to be. That's the default. I also said that my header in this case would be aligned to the left. I said that my nav list would be displayed as a block with a width of 100%. If I added more list items to this, it would continue stretching across the page until it reaches the 100% line. Then it would wrap. Within that nav bar, I've made an unordered list, some rules for my unordered list. I said I want my unordered list to have no padding and a font size of 0.8, which is 8/10 of whatever the normal font is on the page. This is the normal font. This is the list font. It's about 8/10 of the size of that font. I've also said that any list items within that unordered list would be displayed in a particular way. We'll talk more about what all those mean as we move forward. This is your assignment for Chapter 3. We're going to create a page called Sunny Acres. And you have a style sheet that you're going to create this time to go with it. As we look at Sunny Acres, let's go ahead and make it full size. Again, we have a block, a body that's centered on the page. We've given it a specific width in pixels. And each of these links in this navigation section will take us to these different places. Your objective is going to be to change the background of these headings and to make an address at the bottom that looks like this. This background is going to be different than these. This one is different than these. The way that works is with CSS style sheets, you can have a separate style sheet or an internal style sheet. Let's go to the PowerPoint for this class and see what that means. You can look at these. I'm not going to go over them. You can look at them yourself. The general rule of a CSS style is this is the syntax for it. You might need to come back to this later. And here's how it works. Whatever is closest to the text you're modifying is most important. It's going to make the biggest, if there's a conflict within your document, if you say, well, I want the font to be italicized, and you say it right there, but in another place you say you want it undecorated, you don't want it to be italicized. If you said it elsewhere, the one that's closer to the document is the one that makes the most sense. So if it's right there in the same line as the text, it's going to overrule any other places where you've listed it. So the author's inline styles are the most important. Then the author has an embedded style sheet they can make at the top of the page in the head. Then they can link to an external style sheet. And then you have user-defined styles for your computer and browser style sheet. But the most important one is whatever you put closest to it. So why don't we just use those? Well, we don't just use those because we want the same style on every page in our site. We don't want to have to constantly copy from page to page our different directions, and we might not have it, it won't look synchronized. Almost all browsers allow users to modify the default settings of the internal style sheet. Here's an example in Safari where you can go to Advanced and you can have a user-defined style sheet. We don't normally bother with that, but it's there. To link to an external style sheet, you'll use link href equals, and we've been using this all along, and then the name of the file that we're linking to in quotation marks. The relationship is a style sheet, and the MIME type, it's a text CSS style sheet. It goes in the head of the document. We're going to routinely put it in the same place, after our character set, after our title, and after our JavaScript information. You know that JavaScript information. I mentioned it before, but I just want to make sure you hear it again. It's there because you're using HTML5, and if someone has a browser that doesn't read HTML5, this JavaScript file will convert it so that it's readable for them. So an embedded style sheet is inserted directly within the head of the document, and it looks like this. Instead of saying link href equals, it says style type equals text CSS, and then you close it with a styles tag. You can actually have both in the top of your document, and you will in many of the assignments in this book. And the very last style is the inline style, where the styles apply directly to the specific element using the style attribute. The reason they say the last style instead of the first style is because it's not recommended. It's considered inefficient. As I told you, if you're going to put a style right there next to the item, you might as well use HTML code to describe it instead of CSS. But if you're going to do that, what if you're going to have that same look on every page? Well, why would you copy it over and over from page to page? That doesn't make any sense. You want to put it in your style sheet so that your pages all look nice and uniform. When we use styles, we're going to use curly braces instead of HTML, sharp brackets. And so you're going to see that some of the instructions, some of the elements are different for style sheets, for CSS style, than they are for HTML. That's a little confusing at first, but you'll get used to the process. We can say that the body of our page is going to be blue. And we can say that every heading 1 within that page is going to be aligned in the center. We start with our largest descriptions and work our way down to our more specific descriptions. And we have style inheritance. That means that anything that is, we talked about the parent and the child and the sibling elements within the page. The properties are passed from the parent to the child unless something else is described. If a browser must enforce a style, you can append the important keyword to the style property using the syntax property value important. This is often necessary for visually impaired users to not alter the page and make it smaller. So we're going to start with our assignment by going to our page and entering our comment. Let's look at page 140 in our textbook. We're going to use the text editor to open the text home text and maze text and petting text and produce text files. Remember, I like to scooch this over, and I like to sort it this way so that all my HTML files are together. These are the files I need. I'm going to just drag them into Notepad++. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my name in there, in the comments section, and today's date. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to copy it to every page. And I'm going to do Control Shift S to save all of them. Now, what does it want us to do? Look at the code that we've got here. Oh, it wanted us to save them as slightly different names, and we'll have to do that or our links won't work. I forget that every time. So we're going to save this as Haunted. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to close them all. File, close all. And I'm going to come over here and save them there. It's faster and easier. I don't want to do this too often, but it's one option that you have. There are problems with it, but I'm not going to talk about those right now. So I'm going to save this as Haunted. This as Home. One of the problems with this is if you need these original files back, you're going to have to download the data files again. But it prevents you from accidentally working in the wrong pages. It also solves that problem that I talked to you about in the last few assignments where Notepad++ wants to name them .html. I'm going to go ahead and name them let them stay HTML just like the textbook says. Either way works, but this is easier when you're making links. So it says open the home HTML page file in your web browser. Okay. Allow the blocked content. And this is what it looks like. Click the links at the top of the page to view the current appearance of the other pages. We saw what we want them to look like. This is what they look like now. Also notice that there's no color behind them. This is in a different place on the page. And the address at the bottom is formatted differently or unformatted at this time. But at least our links work. So since we learned how to do that in the last chapter, they've already done our links for us. What they haven't linked is our style sheet. And so on page 146, it shows us how to do that. Directly above the closing head tag, same place we put it in every other document, insert the following link element. I always like to check my opening and closing tags to make sure that I've got them right. And then we want to save that. And we want to show that we want to look at that home page and see if it has changed at all. Oh my. It's not working, so I missed something here. Ah, there it is. Let's try that, see if that works. There it is. It never closed this tag because it didn't know what type of MIME type it was. Didn't know it was CSS, and so the whole thing was messed up because of it. So this is what our page looks like when we've applied the style sheet, but we're going to do some more to it, aren't we? To make it look like this. All right. So as you read in your textbook about the things that we've discussed already, it takes you to page 151, where we're going to use the text editor to open the blank file essay styles text CSS from the tutorial 3 folder and save it as essaystyles.css. That's silly. There. Now I've got it ready to go. And I use my text editor to write my style code as well. We're going to make a comment now. The comment code here is different from the comment code. This is how we make a comment code in HTML. This is how we make comment in CSS. We use dash or slash, asterisk, comment, and then we reverse the asterisk, slash. So they want us to make a comment in here that says Sunny Acres style sheet. And they want us to put in our name and the date. And then we're going to save it as essaystyles.css. Now we're going to link the Sunny Acres homepage to this. So let's go to home.htm. We've got a link to a different style sheet, but we can link to as many style sheets as we want. Page 148 talks about how you can link to hundreds of style sheets by using the import commands instead of having them all on the same page. So in this case, we're going to link to this by going and save it. Now we're going to talk about color in CSS. Color values are numerical expressions that describe the properties of a color. CSS uses RGB triplets to represent the intensities mathematically of colors. RGB means red, green, blue. We also can enter hexadecimal numbers. It doesn't look like this. It looks like a pound and then 6 numbers, or a combination of 6 numbers and letters. This is described on page 153. There are also some words we can use to say our color. You can find those in a chart at the bottom of 154 and in an appendix in the back of your textbook, or you can Google it. And I don't think I've shown you how to Google things properly. Let me show you. If I want to find a color, then I go to CSS color codes. And I have all of these choices. CSS color names. Okay, well here's if I don't have to use the appendix at the back of the book, I can sell my book back. And from after the semester's over, I can use these color names. You have to become familiar with your book right now, though, because you're going to be using it for your midterm and your final. But these are the colors. I could say powder blue as a color, and it's going to know that it's supposed to be this color. Is it going to look the same on every page? No. Is it going to look the same when I display it through my my projector in my classroom onto a screen? No. Those factors alter the color and the way it looks, and it can be very disappointing when you can't find the right color. I remember when I was teaching in Conroe, I was teaching a bunch of teachers how to make web pages, and I had never been to College Station, and I had one little teacher, and she was so upset because she was trying to make a web page and she could not find the right shade of maroon. And so I found a color for her, and she said, "That's burgundy." Of course, I had no idea about the Aggie Lynn concept and preoccupation with official maroon. As you can see, there is a color now, maroon, but these have been added over time. So here's that chart again, and to set the background color of an element, we're going to use background color and then the color itself. to set the foreground or text color of an element, we use color and then the color itself. Notice in CSS that we always end with a semicolon. We also have something in CSS3 that we did not have before in the previous class called hue, saturation, lightness. It's a model that describes the colors based on hue, saturation, and lightness, which means we can have a color and then do a percentage that says it's lighter or darker. The shade is lighter or darker, which I imagine, let me go back to this page. Yeah, that's what we would have to do if we were trying to make burnt orange, unless we wanted to use one of those alternate colors. But they're about as burnt orange to a longhorn as burgundy is to an Aggie. So we're not going to do that. We would use color saturation model to do that. Or we could go online and we could look for CSS color code, University of Texas burnt orange. It's going to take us to the University of Texas website where we have, see it says, you are encouraged to use CSS instead. University of Texas at Austin visual guidelines show this as the official UT burnt orange. So we just go there and we can copy that. Not to offend anyone, but I'm just trying to show you how you can use Google to do your assignments and find the colors you want. So we could make both statements, and with CSS3 we can also specify the color's opacity, which means how transparent it is. So we can say RGBA and say red, green, blue, and opacity, or HSLA and then hue, saturation, lightness, and opacity. So to set a semi-transparent color, we're going to have to add that A feature there. Older browsers will display this text in white because it's white with 80% opacity. So they'll just go with white. 255, 255, 255 is the same thing as white. You don't have to put all of this in here. The reason they have it all in here is because they want the older browser to display it as white, and they want a newer browser to understand that the color they want is actually somewhat transparent. So they're going to put both of these in there so that it makes sense. So they get what they want wherever they can get it, but they settle for white wherever they can't. So let's go back to our text. And directly below the style comments, as it tells us on page 157, we're going to set our text color and our background of our page color. So we're going to type CSS code, which is body. Oh, actually, it wants us to put in a comment to say body styles. So comment is /* body styles */. And then it wants us to say the body, space, or tab. You can tab, doesn't matter. Curly bracket, which is next to your P, you hold down the Shift key. And then it's nice and neat the way they do it. They say, they hit enter again. But that's really not necessary. Background, but the reason they do that is because they might have a list of things. So if they have a list of things, they want each on its own line. So we're going to do that. We're going to go background, color, white, end with a semicolon, and then we're going to close our bracket. I'm not going to go back all the way to the other end of the line to do that. Then we're going to have a section. I'm going to go ahead and space this out like they did so that it's easier for you to see. We're going to have a section, comment, heading styles. And so I'm going to go, anything that's an H2 on this page, I want it to have a background color. And the reason I couldn't put a space there, it has to be a dash or something, is there can be no spaces in these definitions within CSS. So I want a background color of RGB triplet. And now this is a regular parentheses, not a curly bracket. It's hard to see here. 0, comma, space, 165, comma, space, 0, close my parentheses, semicolon to end my line. And I'm going to say that I want my font to be white. End it with a semicolon, close my curly brace. And to make it look exactly like the textbook, I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. So now I've set my background color of my document. My page color is white. And I've set my font color for any H2 headings to have a white background, but to be this color, 01650. Let's save that. Go back over here and see what that means. Oh my goodness. Look what happened. You see that? That turned green behind it. So RGB 01650 must be green. Let's see what happens on our other pages. Nothing. Why? Because we haven't added the link to the other pages for the style sheet. But we're going to wait until the instructions tell us to do that. On page 158, we see the blue box that talks about deprecated approaches to color. It says if you work with older web pages, you may encounter deprecated attributes, such as a BG color attribute in the body tag. BG color is the way that it was done in older HTML code. We actually did this for the first couple of chapters in the last textbook, and yet you're not even learning it now except as something that's old-fashioned and you need to fix when you come across it in a web page. So go ahead and read that blue box on page 158 for more information. So we have some other enhancements that are discussed in the textbook, and I've just told you about them, but you should read the details on 158 and 159. Go ahead and pause it and look at that and reinforce what I've talked about. And then we're on page 160. And so our client wants us to modify the style of the H2 headings to make the text appear as a semi-transparent white against a green background. So to create this effect, we're going to have to use what? The A within that RGB to describe the color. Back to the style sheet. We said RGB is green. We said color is white. But she wants an semi-transparent effect. So we're going to use the numbers. You can't put an A with the word, so we're going to have to use the numbers to do that. So back on our style sheet, within the style rule for the H2 selectors, insert the following color property as shown in figure 315. Color. And if we put RGB parentheses 255, 255, 255, that would be the same thing as white. 255 all the way across is white. But that's not what they want us to do. They want us to make it semi-transparent. So we're going to say RGBA, and we're going to add a transparency level, 0.8, which is 80%. We're going to save that, and let's come over here and look at this and see what happens. Well, I can't really tell much on my browser, and it's probably not going to come through on this video, but I'm sure the word became more transparent, not quite as intense. The green background is supposed to bleed through. Let's make sure that I did it right. RGB. Yeah, it says I am. Okay, so it's my browser is going to show it the way that you see it. You need to be doing this on your own browser to see how it looks there. And believe me, if you're looking at it in Safari or Firefox or a different version of Internet Explorer, or because you're on a different monitor, a different resolution monitor, all of these things affect the way your page is going to look, and little details like that are going to be different. Now we're going to look at selector patterns. I'm on page 163. When I'm looking at this, you have the same thing in your book. And the selector patterns take advantage of the cascading effect of style sheets. Cascading, think of a waterfall. as it falls down, it spreads out and changes. It's more intense at the top and it changes as it goes down. Well, cascading style sheets can have changes within them, and they nest those changes. So you have a hierarchy of elements. Remember that we have a parent, child, and then on the same level, a sibling, and then we have descendants of the siblings. I haven't seen that movie yet. I want to go see it. But what are the descendants in that movie? They're the children. They're the heirs. Well, that's the same thing here. So we've got contextual selectors that we're going to use. And there's a picture on 165 that describes that. Meanwhile, if we stay with the textbook, we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to make those changes that are described on page 164 in our style sheet. Directly above the style rule for H2 headings, insert the following style rule as shown on the page. Why are we putting it directly above? Because, curly brace, H1 comes before H2, doesn't it? Background color, RGB, parentheses, 125, comma, space, 186, comma, space, 240. There's no 0.8 there because we're not giving a transparency level. We're going to say the font, white. What this means is that anything that's an H1, so far, the way we've written it, anything that's an H1, marked as an H1 in the HTML of our site, is going to have a background color of this. And the font is going to be white. Anything that's an H2 in our document at this time that we've linked to is going to have these attributes. So that's what that means. Let's go back over here and see what happens when we save that. Changed it. So can you catch my error? What messed it up? Everything changed, but I only changed this. My green went away. So my mistake was somewhere in here. Oh, well, heck. Did I close it? No. There's my curly brace. Did I put a semicolon here? No. There's my semicolon. Now save. What happens? Wow. Okay. So the word up there went away. Why? It didn't really go away. It just turned white. And the background color didn't work because I had dyslexia. Now I save, and now look what happens. Could I edit that out? Yeah. Did I do it on purpose? Maybe. Do you feel better about your mistakes? I hope so. Let's go back to this and look at contextual selectors. There's a sample of hierarchies on page 165 in your book, and what it means is, and these are the codes that go with that. I think I have a picture coming up here. No, I guess not. Huh. Bizarre. They should have a picture there. Look at the picture in your book, 165. It shows the body characteristic is at the very top of the hierarchy, and underneath that you have H1, H2, paragraph, H2, paragraph. Those are all siblings. They're all the same level. But what it says is anything that is marked as B within that paragraph is going to be a certain way. Anything that's marked as a span within that paragraph is going to be a certain way. Anything that's marked as B that's within a span within a paragraph is going to be a certain way. And the way we do that is by using the hierarchy. So let's go on to the next page. We use ID in class to target styles to a specific element or a group of elements. So we can name something like we've done in the previous assignments with an ID, and then anything that is in that element we can say it's going to look a certain way. We can give it a class, which means all elements with that value can look a certain way. Class is written like this. We can have paragraphs belonging to the main class. We would have, this is the syntax, this is an example, paragraph within the main class. We can have element, an attribute, and that means that all elements containing that attribute. So all A's that have an href are going to be this certain way, and so forth and so on. Take a moment to look at these and come back to it as you work with them. Of particular note are pages, please read carefully, pages 165 through 167 to see some examples of contextual selectors and how that works. Now we're going to work again in our style sheet. We're going to return to this file, change the selector for the H1 heading rule to section H1. All right, so up here we're going to say section H1. How do I know what it's talking about? Well, because it's the tutorial, and the tutorial is a lot clearer than the review or the case, isn't it? You're learning that. So I turn to the next page and there's a picture of it, and I can just do what it says. Then save it, and then reload this page. Oh, look. The blue went away there. Okay, so this was the blue, and that must be the RGB triplet for blue. And so when we wanted this to go blue, that went blue too. What's the difference? Well, let's look at that page, home.htm. We have a header with an H1 element in it. That's this logo. We have a nav bar, no H1 element. Then we have a section with a header with an H1 element in it. So what we said on the style sheet was we don't want all H1 elements to be blue, have a blue background. We only want the H1 element within the section to have a blue background. That's why we added that section there, and that's why I changed it. So I want you to carefully look at the attribute selectors that are available to you as you work with CSS, listed on pages 168 and 169. Read the white text. The tables are a little harder to understand, but read the white text and try to put it in a place where you can understand it. Try to fit it in your head to where you can understand it. And then we'll move on and practice with it a little bit so it makes sense. So go ahead and do that and then come back to me. I'm on 170, and I'm going to start using some attribute selectors, and I'm going to use the class attribute. So I'm going to go back to my style sheet at the bottom of 170, and I'm going to add the following style rule at the bottom of the style sheet. And I'm going to make a comment. The reason for these comments is to make it easier for us to find things later on, and for other designers, if we're working in a team, to find things. And we're going to say section P closing color RGB parenthesis 0 comma space 165 comma space 0 parenthesis semicolon text align colon right semicolon close curly braces. Now what does that mean? It's a style rule that tells paragraphs in the closing class nested within a sections element to display the text in green and right align. This is green, this is right align. It's saying paragraphs in the closing class nested within a section element. Yep. It sounds like algebra, doesn't it? Don't get scared, it's not. So let's see what that does to this page. Oh, it made this green. This was a paragraph, and it made it green. Let me show you again. I'm just going to take that comment, scoot it down here, and comment out the whole thing. That allows me to test my mistakes. But I got to save it. Come back here and test it. It's okay. This is what it's taking, and it's going to move it to the right, and it's going to make it green. So let's change that comment to where it's supposed to be. Save, and now we see what we were trying to do. Now we're going to style our fonts on our pages. The default is Times New Roman for most browsers, but we can change that by saying font-family, :space, and then list our fonts. A comma separated list of specific or generic font names. Here are some web-safe fonts. What does web-safe mean? It means that they're going to look like this pretty much every time, or that they're going to be if they're not, they're going to be interpreted as something else. If you want to have a fancy font, you have to create an image with that font, or you have to add a font definition to your website. Because as you can see, these are all pretty similar. We have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 variations of the same thing. There's no mistral there or cursive script or anything like that. So we're going to define a font face using the style property font-family, :space, and then our fonts. It's going to be a comma separated list of fonts that the browser can use, and then we're going to set the size with the CSS tag font size. And the size is the CSS unit of length in either relative or absolute units. Then we're going to set the space between the letters, which is called kerning, using letter spacing. Then we're going to use the space between words. We're going to set that by setting our tracking as word spacing. And this is how it's going to be done for our assignment. So let's go there. Before we do this, please read the text on page 174 and 175. It talks about pixels and resolution, very important information. So now we're going to set the font size of the H1 headings, okay? Add the following style rule for H1 headings in the section element. Okay, that's this then, H1 headings in the section element. We're going to say font size. (1.7 EM). No space between the EM and the number. Semicolon after it. We already have a curly bracket closing that, so we don't have to worry about that. And the EM means that it's a relative unit. Depends on the unit, on the style sheet. If it's used for setting font size, it expresses the size relative to the font size of the parent element. So in this case, we're going to say the parent element is the web page body, and so this rule that any H1 is going to be 1.7 means it's going to be almost twice the font size of the body text, 1.7 times. Let's save that and see what happens over here. Oh, okay, so it was much bigger. We've made it smaller, because why was it bigger? Well, the browser was just saying, okay, it's an H1 and this is how big we make H1s. The browser has its own style sheet set within it. And so what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, Mr. Browser, this is how big we want our H1s. Not as big as you say, but as big as we say. We're taking control for our document. And you know, I missed something on page 173, and you're all freaking out and pulling your hair and saying, that crazy lady, we didn't set the sans serif font. Notice this is not quite where we're going with our page, and on 173 there's a picture of what we want it to look like. Sans serif are these little tags that, see this L? You see the little tags at the top and bottom of the L? Those are called serifs. So sans serif is Latin or French for without those little squiggles. So we want ours to be without squiggles, and so we're going to go into page 173 and look at the brown box. We're going to look at the body, and we're going to set our font family. With a semicolon. Now look at what happens. Boom. It got real ugly actually, but that's what they wanted. So okay, moving on. Past the box on 175. There is a box on 176, a green box, that talks about selecting a text font and talks about how you want to design your page very carefully and select your text fonts carefully. They need to be readable, but you consider your audience. If you're doing a wild site about, oh, I don't know, death metal music or something like that, you may want a freakier font, and you may want it almost difficult to read. You may want people to feel like they're on some sort of LSD trip or something as they read your font. Well, then you can do that, You just have to remember that it's not going to make any sense to some people. But that's okay, because you're designing for your audience, aren't you? So what we're going to do is, there's a demo, and I want you to try that. It's here in your folder. A demo CSS file from the Tutorial 3 demo folder in your web browser. So let's go up to the demo folder and run demo css.html. Click yellow to allow the block content and play with this page. You can specify text style values and see what happens with them. Click the top right box, select and delete the word enter. Sample page text here, type Sunny Acres. Hit enter, type corn maze. I'm on page 177 if you're lost. Press the tab key to preview that. Now we're going to come over here and play with it. We're going to say font family box. Where's the font family box? Here. We're going to change it to sans serif. Now watch the preview box as I do this. See how it changes? Watch the style box as I go back to the default. None. See? And I can play with these and do all kinds of different, within the few varieties that we have. So it says select sans serif. Alright, fine. And then it says in the font size box, item 4, it says on page 177, replace the default text with 2. Font size default. Okay, we just do that. 2. Select EM in the corresponding unit box. Oh, my goodness. This changed, didn't it? It got much bigger. Enter 0.3 in the letter spacing box. Okay. 0.3. And then select EM in the corresponding unit box. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is what we're playing with here. And then go enter 0.8 in the word spacing box. And select EM in the corresponding unit box. Press the tab key. Actually, it already did that for us. We didn't need to press the tab key. It just happened as it happened. So you play with this, and then come back to the video. Okay, on page 179, it tells us to, after we've played with that, to play with leading and kerning fonts. Then we're going to change the spacing of the headings on the website. Go back to our style sheet. Within the style rules for the section H1 selector, section H1 selector, and the H2 selector, insert the following style values. And it shows us there what it wants, which makes it very easy, much easier for us than the review in the case. Correct? Letter spacing, colon space, 0.4, EM, no space there, semicolon, return, text indent, colon space, 1, EM, semicolon. And it wants that in both H1 and H2, so I'm just going to select that and copy it. And look at this. See how this text is black? That tells me that I got a problem. Right there, there's no semicolon. And that is why this wasn't transparent. Look at the word hours now that I fixed that semicolon. Well, it moved over. Still not transparent for the same reasons that I told you before. Okay. Now we continue working. Revised spacing shows on page 180 just like it looks here. We're going to work with the font styles and weights. So I want you to read pages 180, 181. And let me tell you about this. The font style can be set using the font style type, and type is normal, italic, or oblique. Then you can specify the font weight, where type is normal, bold, bolder, lighter, or an actual number. We can set a decoration. We're at none, underline, overline, or line through. We can transform text. We can make it capitalized, uppercase, lowercase, or none. We can say a font variant where it's normal or small caps. Notice our addresses for the last chapter were small caps. That's because the style sheet said font variant. In the address section would be small caps. We can align text vertically by using any of these values. Vertical align, colon, space, baseline, bottom, middle, or sub, or superscript. We had HTML code for superscript. Now we're learning how to do it with CSS. And we can combine those all in a single style. So we can say the font is going to have a font style, a font variant, a font weight, a font size, a line height, and a font family. And notice there's no punctuation between those, but a semicolon at the end. We're going to do that on page 184 in our footer. We're going to make our footer look like this. Oops, almost time to go to class. So let's do that now. After reading the text that I just covered on page 183, 182, 183, make sure you read 180 and 181. Let's do the tan box on 184. At the bottom of the style sheet, make the following rules. The background color, the color. See how it's black? That's because I didn't hit semicolon, right? Put that in there. Color of the font. The color of the font on newer browsers that will see it. Semicolon. The font is going to be normal, small caps. Here's the size, 0.8 EM. Length, 4 EM. This is an apostrophe, not a quotation marks. Times New Roman. And then there's a comma after that. Times serif. We're going to end it with a semicolon and say that we want our text align to center. Oops, end it with a semicolon, girl. And then close our curly brackets. Everything looks okay there. Now where did we make this change? We made it in the footer. We made it to the address within the footer. So on this page, do we have an address within a footer? Because you have to set that up first. Yes, we have an address within a footer. All right, so let's see what that looks like over here. Wow, fabulous. See what it did to the footer? All of the things we put on there. You can set up alternative style sheets. On page 185 it talks about this. And you can use web fonts. Text design on the web largely has been limited to a few web-safe fonts that are supported by all major browsers. It would be better if a browser would automatically download whatever fonts are required for a web page in the same way it downloads images. Specifications for downloadable fonts or web fonts have been around for several years, but most browsers have begun to support this technology only recently. Different browsers support different font file formats. Figure 338 describes these different formats and their current levels of browser support. Notice in the chart, our friend Internet Explorer is different from everybody else, and always is and always will be. So we can put declarations about these different fonts using the @font face rule on 186. The @font face rule, though, if we're going to use it, we're going to have to give multiple declarations. We're going to say the font family is Noble Regular. And then we're going to say one source, the source for Internet Explorer, is going to be here. Another source is going to be here, for all the other guys. And we're going to have to put these in here to, if we want to use a particular font. Go ahead and read those pages on page 186 and 187. Very important about installing a cross-browser web font. This is something that your predecessors in the fall class and previous classes did not have available to them. So you are very lucky and you can go brag to them about it. Now, we don't have to type all of that. We're going to open this text file here, Noble Text. On page 188, we're going to copy the @font face rule located at the top of the file. Just this much. We're going to come back to our style sheet. Notice I'm on the home page because I clicked over there. Back to my style sheet. And it wants us to paste it into the style sheet directly above the style rule for the body element. In other words, it's not going to be in that comment. If you put in that comment, it's not going to work. But it goes at the top of the page. All right, so there's our comment. They want us to paste that right there. I'm a little concerned that everything is black. I'm wondering what's up with that. But we'll see how that works. Next, you'll revise the style rule for the body element so that it uses the Noble Regular font as the first option if available and supported by the browser. You'll also set the line height of body text to 1.4 EM and the line height of the page headings to 1.8 EM to accommodate the metrics of this new font. Within the font family property for the body document, font family, insert Noble Regular. Oh, down here, okay. So we've got to put it down here. Font family. Noble Regular, no space, comma, space, add the property line height dot 1.4 EM to the style rule for the body element. And to the style rules for the H1 and H2 elements. Add 1.8. Let's see, so wait. 1.4 to the body, to the style rule for the body element, and line height 1.8 to the style rules for the H1 and H2 elements. Okay. So it means our section H1 element, they want it above the text indent, so let's put it there. Change it to 1.8. Copy it again. And they want us to put it in the H2 element above text indent. Save it. Oops, I just hit Control D instead. Sorry. Control S. Come back to our document, our page, and see what happens to our headings. Oh, okay, well it changed them dramatically, didn't it? We are almost done with this section, and I'm going to have to stop this video and go teach class face-to-face and let you finish reading pages 189 and 190. And then I'll post another video for the second part of the chapter.